Chapter 1886 Sun Night. He raised his hooves and surprisingly began to run at breakneck speed across the sea. Percival, a centaur, was most proud of his speed, and this run was truly out of reach even for the flower, which was sneaking along the seabed. Percival stuck his dual swords to his sides and, reaching behind him with his free hand, took down a golden hunting bow. As he ran forward, he drew the enormous hunting bow. It was a very strange bow, with only the bow body and no bowstring, and it was hundreds of meters long, even longer than Percival himself. He held the hunting bow in his left hand, and in a strong but empty grip with his right, a misty supernatural power slowly took shape and turned into a bowstring. When he drew the hunting bow, the 10 supernatural arrows were also ready. The enormous hunting bow was drawn to full moon by him, and a terrifying aura surrounded him. Flower, who was chasing after him like a blue dragon under the sea, sensed the danger. Whoosh! 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 10 enormous arrows left the bow and shot towards Flower. Without hesitation, Flower activated his supernatural cannon under the sea. A red energy cannon exploded under the sea, instantly triggering a huge tsunami. Boom! 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 Huge pillars of water shot up into the sky, forming a huge wave mountain. The 10 arrows shot over, creating 10 channels, but their power was greatly reduced by the sea water. Flower suddenly pounced out of the waves and bit down on one of the arrows. Crunch! Its sharp teeth snapped and it bit the energy arrow to pieces. More arrows came at him from all directions and angles, surrounding Flower in hypnosis. Flower snapped his paw back to shatter one arrow, and then another paw caught another arrow. Even the arrows that came from the side and back were caught in his paws at incredible speeds and angles. Percival saw this and his eyes slowly widened in disbelief. Giving a cat such powerful supernatural abilities is cheating. In the world created by the Creator, the cat is a perfect creature. Beautiful, swift, strong, intelligent, and flexible, the ancient kingdom of Kermit believed that the cat was the messenger of death because it was too perfect. Some even believed that it would be the creature that replaces the existence of humans in the future. Percival ran as hard as he could, drawing an arrow and shooting it at Flower as he ran. The arrows from a hunting bow are extremely powerful, and every one of them that hits the sea sends up a huge wave. But the arrow in Percival's eye did not seem as fast as he had imagined. Everything that the dynamic vision captured was in slow motion for ordinary people. Flower roared, and all of a sudden, his fur suddenly stood on end like steel needles. Before Percival could fire the next round, his attack broke out first. A dense cloud of cat hair erupted from his body, like a dark cloud closing in on Percival. A buzzing sound rang in Percival's ears, and his vision turned gloomy. Percival was also a bit overwhelmed by the dense cloud-like attack. He had to switch back to his 2 curved swords and swing them in front of him, forming an impenetrable barrier. Bing! Bang! The sound of impacts continued to ring out. The cat hair was as sharp as nails and heavy, and Percival found it difficult to resist. After he finally blocked this round of attacks, the roaring sound in his ears once again resounded, like a volcanic eruption at the bottom of the sea. When he looked closely, the scene in front of him left him speechless. He actually saw a huge black sphere, wrapped in a large amount of seawater, rolling towards him. The cat chariot. Beasts don't need fancy tricks to fight. With its natural physical abilities, Flower is on par with, or even superior to, top-level enhanced mutants. It completely encases its body in sharp, heavy fur, then curls up into a huge ball and charges at Percival like a hedgehog. The huge body, the sharp spines all over, and the terrifying speed. It was like a mountain of spiky flesh. One impact would have pierced through even the thickest defensive layer. Even if the spikes on the outside could be blocked, the impact would be more than a carbon-based creature's flesh could withstand. Rumble! The cat chariot chased after Percival, and for a moment, Percival couldn't think of how to break through its defenses. So he could only flee in a flustered manner. Boom! He leapt up from the ground, avoiding the first attack, and a wide path was opened up in the sea beneath him. However, before Percival could catch his breath, the cat chariot turned around in front of him and continued to charge towards him. What the fuck? Percival couldn't help but curse, and then the four hooves struggled to escape into the distance. Rumble! The cat chariot followed closely behind. On both battlefields, the mutants on Team Zhang Yi were gaining the upper hand. The situation had made the members of the Knights of the Round Table look serious. How could this be? Gawain, the pure knight, muttered to himself, unable to believe what he was seeing. The mutants on their team are so strong? This is impossible. In particular, the members of the Knights of the Round Table who had once traveled with Lancelot to the Demon Kingdom under the ground in the southwest region could not believe their eyes when they saw this. They had once fought against people like Flower and Liang Yu, and although the other party was powerful at that time, they were only slightly stronger than them. But now, that woman and even that cat were already mutants as powerful as the Black Chariot level? Was this right? Was this reasonable? Gawain and the others looked at each other, but if they were to blame, they could only blame their lack of strength. Among the Knights of the Round Table, they were also among the weaker ones. King Arthur only cared about the results when doing things. The resources he obtained were all given to the knights with the strongest strength, talent, and best track records. This created a Matthew effect, causing the strong to remain strong and the weak to remain weak. Merlin frowned as he looked at the two battlefields, his eyes full of incomprehension. How could this be? It doesn't make sense. They shouldn't be this strong. The Knights of the Round Table have their current strength because we have fought in many battles over the past 3 years, twice going deep into Atlantis. We obtained treasures from the ancient ruins. But what is their source of strength? A bold guess inevitably came to his mind. Perhaps what Zhang Yi's team obtained in Fremons was not as simple as it seemed. Yes, Zhang Yi had cheated the King Arthur team and the Morana team out of 2 spirits of sacrifice, and he knew it. But even if they obtained the spirits of sacrifice, they would need time to digest them and stimulate their own potential. In contrast, Liang Yu and the cat did not seem like they had just been promoted. Chaos. Merlin muttered Zhang Yi's title, and he began to take him more seriously. On the other hand, Yang Xinxin's group did not seem surprised by the current situation. They knew exactly how strong Liang Yu and Flower were. The only thing we need to worry about is Chun Lei's group. Uncle Yu looked at the last battlefield, where Fatty Su was fighting Gawain, the Sun Knight. When he saw the screen, his eyebrows furrowed. It seems that Chun Lei has encountered his most troublesome opponent. This is going to be bad. Everyone from the Knights of the Round Table also turned their attention to this battlefield. If the situation of Gawain was also worrying, then they would completely be unable to accept it. However, after seeing the situation of the battle, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Great, the fat guy on the other side doesn't seem to be very strong. The morning knight, Tristan said with a smile, patting his chest and letting out a long sigh of relief. Gawain looked at the fat man on the screen with mixed feelings. He and Fatty Su had spent some time together when they were in the National Library of the Nash Kingdom, and they had also met the Sage of the Nash Kingdom. Unfortunately, in the end, the sage was mistakenly killed due to a misunderstanding. Gawain's expression fell into Tristan's eyes, and he raised an eyebrow, teasingly asking, "Gawain, my dear pure knight. You must have met these people when you first went to the Huashu Kingdom. How strong is that fat guy?" Gawain thought for a moment. How strong is Fatty Su? Is he strong? At that time, he was clearly very weak, but he deliberately pretended to be a master to trick him. "He's just a useless fat guy," said Gawain calmly. "That's perfect." Tristan smiled, crossed his arms, and continued to observe the battle unfolding on the battlefield. "I told you, Chaos Team is only made up of mutants from a small coastal town in the Huashu Kingdom, so how could there be so many powerful mutants?" They all felt that Flower and Liang Yu were already the best mutants that the other side could offer. Fatty Su was indeed having a very difficult time against Gawain, the Sun Knight. Since the battle began, he had been suppressed by the other side. At this moment, he was standing on a frozen sea, gasping for breath, with scorched marks on his body. Fortunately, the combat suit only looked scorched, but was actually undamaged. After all, this was an exoskeleton armor personally created by Liu Karen. It was weaker than the armor created for Zhang Yi using the six-winged sovereign Ichigard body, but it was also a level of the 10 demon gods technology. But fortunately, he was protected by this armor. Otherwise, Fatty Su would have been burned to ashes by that attack. In front of him, above the ocean, a burly bald man stood between the sky and the sea. His body was burning with flames, and wisps of yellow and red flames rose up, condensing into a huge sun above him. Gawain, the Sun Knight, his ability is the sun. Ice ability users, the darlings of the Ice Age. It's a pity that you met me today. Sun Knight, Gawain. The ice you are so proud of will all melt before me, Gawain said to Fatty Su with a voice of regret. The layer of frost armor covering his body did indeed melt rapidly in Gawain's presence, and it was impossible to form an effective defense. It's hot. The temperature in the air had reached an alarming level, and the intelligence system warned Fatty Su that the outside temperature had exceeded 90 degrees Celsius. Especially near Gawain's body, the temperature was reaching alarming levels. Under these temperatures, Fatty Su's ice and snow abilities would be greatly weakened. Moreover, since the battlefield was the sea, it would be much more difficult to freeze the sea water into ice to attack opponents than on land. I absolutely cannot lose this battle, Fatty Su said between clenched teeth, because if I lose, I'll lose face. The intelligence system kindly reminded him, it's okay, in front of the rest of the team, your face doesn't have much value anyway. Fatty Su's facial muscles twitched violently. What the hell, thanks for the reminder. You're welcome, I was only doing my job. Fatty Su had no time to waste talking nonsense with it, because he had to take control of the battlefield. Fatty Su thrust his hands into the sea, activating his ice-related abilities to the full. Blue light shone from his hands, and in an instant, with him at the center, the sea water began to rapidly freeze towards the bottom, as if it were forming ice flowers. Crack! A large area of the sea surface was frozen, 2, 3, or even 4 kilometers in radius. The frozen area was growing larger and larger. Gawain looked at Fatty Su's actions and his eyes grew even more compassionate. What is the point of continuing this futile act? He raised his right hand towards the sky, and the next moment, the huge sun rolled towards the direction where Fatty Su was inset. Rumble! Where the sun passed, the sea water evaporated in large quantities, and Fatty Su's trend of freezing the sea was also stopped as a result. The sea water that had frozen into ice quickly melted back into a liquid state. A huge avalanche. Fatty Su threw his arms up with all his strength, as if he wanted to overturn the entire sea. In an instant, he had plucked a huge snowy mountain out of the sea. Underneath the ocean, the sea water was churning, and due to the extreme low temperatures, it formed rolling white icebergs as it churned. The snow-capped mountain was controlled by Fatty Su and levitated, suddenly bursting apart. Under the entrainment of the waves, the seawater, ice shards, and huge icebergs all surged forward together. The height of the wave exceeded 300 meters, a terrifying sight rarely seen in human history, a huge ice tsunami. Fatty Su tried to use an absolutely massive amount of ice and snow to flood Gawain before Gawain could melt them. Self-righteous. Gawain's voice still carried a note of pity. When the enormous sun set in the sky, it had not even come close to the ice tsunami yet, and it had already caused a large amount of ice to melt in midair. The sun didn't even need to come close, the temperature naturally came with the radiation. The enormous wave was directly turned into an ordinary tsunami by this sun, and it passed through the huge iceberg and crashed towards Fatty Su. Fatty Su could feel the scorching heat. Being hit head-on by this sun is unimaginable. At this moment, he is not protected by Zhang Yi, Uncle Yu, or anyone else, and is all alone. He can no longer rely on others, and can only rely on himself. His hands and feet are cold, which is the instinct of any creature that encounters something dangerous and is preparing to escape. However, he does not want to escape. His mind is clearer than ever before, but is this a spinning lantern? No, It isn't. It is a reaction born from his desire to save himself in a critical moment. Frost met the sun, as if they were naturally matched, an unbeatable pair. But Zhang Yi had clearly said that the ice and snow mutants were the darlings of this world, right? Think. He must think of a way to break through, he can't just lose so shamefully. Many things flashed through his mind. Over the years, he had been by Zhang Yi's side, and although most of the time he would not be involved in the front-line battles, when Zhang Yi fought, he would silently observe in shadow space. Think hard. How did those powerful beings, those world-class mutants, fight? Morana, yes, Morana. Su Chunlei's brain was not stupid, but he was not someone of extremely high intelligence either. At this critical moment, the simplest solution he could think of was imitation. Think about it. If Morana, the world's #1 ice and snow mutant, were here, what would she do? Morana's trump card is absolute zero, which causes molecules to be in a state of near rest. I heard Miss Yang and the boss say that a decrease in temperature slows molecular movement, while an increase in temperature speeds it up. Therefore, the abilities of Gawain and I should not be such that I am restrained by him. Rather, we restrain each other. Calm down and think carefully, I am not in an absolutely disadvantageous situation. In an instant, Fatty Sue's mind, which had been on the brink of life and death, became clear. That's not the real sun. This sun is burning because of the release of his supernatural powers. I just need to lower the temperature of the entire space to drain his powers. Let the sun no longer burn. Fatty Sue's mind recalled Morana. He is not Morana, and does not have such a genius ability. But by imitating a tiger, one can still achieve the result. Fatty Sue gritted his teeth and slapped his hands together fiercely, releasing the power of ice and snow in all directions indiscriminately. A blue glow erupted from the center of his hands, illuminating the sea. The temperature in the air quickly dropped, and the blazing sun dimmed a little. Fatty Sue was ecstatic, knowing that he had guessed correctly. The sun continued to fall towards him, but the entire surrounding space had already become Fatty Sue's domain of eternal ice. Fatty Sue could not do what Morana had done, and bring the movement of the molecules to a near standstill, but with an ability index of 18,000 points, he could slow down the movement of the molecules in the entire space in any way he wanted. The energy released by the blazing sun fought against the eternal frozen field. By the time it landed in front of Fatty Sue, it had become much smaller. Fatty Sue was greatly encouraged. He reached his right hand into the sea and condensed the seawater into a huge weapon, which he held in the palm of his hand. It was a heavy 9-toothed rake more than 2 meters long. Technically, he was not proficient, so this kind of heavy long weapon was very suitable for him. After all, if nothing else, it can still help with the ground. Facing the sun, which was setting above his head, Fatty Sue roared, clenched his hands around the icy blue 9-toothed rake, and smashed it down hard. Bang! The 9-toothed rake was swung around by him, tracing a perfect arc in midair before crashing down hard on the sun. In an instant, the huge ball of fire burst open, and broken pieces of flame fell onto the ice. Crack! The ice beneath Fatty Sue's feet shattered, and the entire sea was filled with huge pieces of floating ice. Huh! Gawain tilted his head and looked at Fatty Sue, who was now full of fighting spirit. You seem different. But... He slowly raised his right hand, and a ball of flame condensed in the palm of his hand, before puff, turning into an even larger fiery sun. What are you so happy about? Everything is just getting started. Fatty Sue held the 9-tooth rake in both hands, but already had a plan in mind. His ice attacks would melt in the sun, so an active attack was not the best option. Think about what the boss would do at this time. Since there is no good way to defeat your opponent, first think about how to protect yourself. Below his feet was an expansive sea, but unfortunately Fatty Sue's ability to control the water was not strong enough. Otherwise, he could have restrained the opponent's ability very well. Water, wait a minute. Fatty Sue stared at Gawain, who was suspended in the air like a god, and a new idea came to him. Ice melts to become water. If we want to extinguish his flames completely, we need water. He looked up at the sky and suddenly an idea came to him. Let's try it. It can't go wrong. Fatty Sue slammed his 9-toothed rake into the ice with both hands, and the blue power of ice rushed into the sea, freezing a large amount of water into ice. Then he exerted his strength with both hands, and an iceberg was shoveled off the ice surface like a potato, and then hurled at Gawain. Gawain frowned. What is the point of this? Above the sun, flames like a crown surrounded it, and the flames that extended swept in front of them. The iceberg instantly melted by half, and then quickly turned into steam at a very fast speed. Fatty Sue quickly ran across the ice, constantly using his 9-toothed rake to dig out the iceberg and attack Gawain. Trying to use this method to drain my strength? Gawain said indifferently, that would be so stupid. His finger pointed to the sky. My source of power is the sun. It's a little past 10 a.m., and the sun's power is only going to get stronger and stronger. And so will my power. It's foolish to try to burn out the flames of an epsilon-level mutant. Fatty Sue paid no heed to Gawain's words, and continued doing the same movements. Boom! 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 The icebergs were hurled at Gawain, whistling. Gawain did not expend much effort, and the solar corona extended out, melting all the icebergs. Steam rose up into the sky,